I'm in Japan and I'm looking for Japan market vintage watches, maybe a really nice Cartier. So come with me, I'll show you all the stores I go to and where you can get the best deals. Let's check it out. So before I get into the stores, I want to break it down by categories based on what watches you're looking for. Category 1 is you're looking for an amazing deal, but you don't really care what the watch is. Whereas category 2 is you have a vague idea of maybe some brands that you might want, and you want an okay deal. And category 3 is your high-end luxury watches that might be harder to find in your home country. So category 1 is going to be getting those best deals and you don't really care what watch is. And by far, I think the best place to do this is at some of Tokyo's flea markets. The one that this footage is from is Gokukuji Shrine Flea Market, but they have different flea markets every week. I'm going to put a link in the description that will indicate what flea markets will be there on the weekends when you're there. A lot of these places are cash only, so make sure to bring a lot of cash. But you have to realize when you go to Japan that they have access to eBay. So if you're going to stores that are likely also selling on eBay, that kind of normalizes what the prices are. Versus when you go to these flea markets for people who are just trying to get rid of some of their old stuff, it's not going to be like that. When I went, I even haggled using Google Translate. So I think it was a really good environment, especially if you have an open mind to what you want to buy. When I went to this flea market, I ended up purchasing a King Seiko, which is a really high quality Seiko that they made as a separate house while they were also developing Grand Seiko. I paid about $200 for it. I think I ended up paying 30,000 yen. On a little side note, I was talking to someone and found out that it's a little more polite in Japan to hand people things with two hands. So if you're buying a watch and handing them money, it's more polite to hand with two hands. It doesn't instantly mean it's rude if you're handing people stuff with one hand, but just nice to follow some etiquette when you're there. Now, when you're buying watches at a flea market, all you can really ensure for yourself is if a watch is running or not. So you have to kind of agree to yourself beforehand if you're fine if you get this watch home that's 80 years old, that it might not be running perfectly and you might need to service it soon. I personally don't have tons of servicing money, and I'm fine if my watches aren't running that well right now while I'm still in a lower income state. But I'm going to take some time right now and highlight some different brands for you that are all Japan-made brands that I think vintage models of would highlight your entire trip to Japan pretty well. So the three big brands that I'm going to highlight are Citizen, Seiko, and Orient. Flea markets are definitely going to be better for your lower end watches. I found a Grand Seiko here that was, I believe, about $700. So looking in those watches that are definitely under the $1,000 range, your flea markets are going to be a really good option. That being said, I obviously haven't been to every flea market in Japan, and I'm sure some will be better than others, but I think you should take the time and try and go to one. Lastly, I was looking for some very, very early Seiko examples when they were still branded as Sakosha, and the flea market was actually the only place where I found some pocket watches that had this branding. So if that's what you're looking for, it might be worth a look here as well. Now, the second category is a lot of fun because you can go hunt for it on any day. Finding a good deal on a secondhand watch can be done really well at a lot of Japan's thrift shops. So starting with this one, Book Off. Book Off does sell watches, but specifically I think only at their Book Off Plus stores. At this Book Off Plus in Osaka, they had a huge selection of old secondhand G-Shocks, Casios, Seikos, but they also had mid-tier and higher-end watches. And that's really important because I think in Japan, it can be hard to find some of these mid-tier watches. These two watches right here are Creedor, so they're high-quality examples of Seikos. One of them was actually solid gold and was selling pretty close to its scrap price. But you can also get some less common Swiss brands like Sin, Edix, Bell & Ross. Now, since these are brick-and-mortar stores, they have access to eBay, so they know that there's a price they can sell these for online, so you're not going to be finding these for half off what they're worth. But if you were just searching for any type of Omega or open to any type of Cartier, these could be great places to go and look for them. This solid gold Cartier was about $3,200. And you should also make sure that you bring your passport to all brick and mortar stores you go to, because when you're spending more than like 5,000 yen, showing your passport will give you the tax-free price, which is probably about 10% off what the marked price is. On a little side note, the store was also great for jewelry. I pulled about 5 silver rings out of their just ring bucket, and they were about $1.50 a piece. Exploring is also a viable option, as I found this thrift shop Hard Off, which I hadn't heard of before. Pushed my friend out of the way to go look at their watches. They had a couple different cabinets, some higher end. In here you can see Grand Seiko, King Seiko, Rolex. They also had some lower end watches in different cabinets. Now, a thrift store I saw everywhere that I think you should always pop in is 2nd Street. It's pretty hit or miss, and the watches you find here are kind of random. But I did find a vintage Japan Market Citizen here for $20. So always pop in if you see these, just take a quick look. Modoff was another thrift store that actually had a really good vintage selection. I saw a pocket watch here, even though it was a Waltham. There were Juvenias, vintage manual wines, and some of the prices here were very tempting. Like this Seiko with an Eco Drive movement for only 5,000 yen. That's like 30 bucks. This Juvenia is 15,000, which is about $100. So they had some really cool vintage watches. But now I get to show you probably the shop in Osaka, Japan that had the best selection of vintage watches at lower price ranges. This is under $1,000, with most of these falling in probably the $200 to $400 range. It was actually surprisingly difficult for me to find a store that had a huge selection of vintage Seikos like this. So I found Creedors, King Seikos, Grand Seikos, old vintage regular Seikos. So I put the name of the company on Google at the beginning of the clip because it was actually kind of hard to find this store on a map. And as you saw from the beginning clips, it's very crowded in here. Their prices are similar to eBay Japanese watch prices. So some are a little more expensive, some are a little less. I actually ended up purchasing a Universal Genève watch for about $280, which I think was a very good deal on it. This store is in like the American district in Japan called Amerikamura. And on the front of the store, it says Amerikamura Free Market, but it had a different name online, so I put that at the beginning. While I was purchasing the watch, the man who helped me was asking me a bunch of questions and why I like watches. I told him that I do YouTube and TikTok, and he just started opening drawers and drawers showing all the insane selection that they have. I didn't get any special deals or any promotion or anything. Just showing you because this, I think, is a store that would be pretty hard to actually find. He offered to let me record anything that I want, which makes me feel great because I'm always self-conscious about recording, and even found a nice box for my watch. Here's the Universal Genève that I bought for $280, and I wanted to highlight this store because there are tons of watch shops in Japan, but you'd be surprised when, especially in Tokyo, you find out that they are all selling Rolex, Omega, Cartier. Don't get me wrong, I love Rolex, Omega, and Cartier, but I know that a lot of you are looking for the more affordable watches and don't have thousands of dollars to drop in Japan when you go. Now, if you're looking for a modern watch, slightly under retail, Aki International, Bic Camera, and Don Quixote all have a selection of modern watches. My friend Zach ended up getting a Seiko 5 from Aki International for just under $100. I think Seiko 5s are retailing nowadays for about $125. So he avoids the tax, he avoids the shipping if he's ordering online, so he saves a little bit of money. They adjusted it for him in the store, but it needed a little bit of a micro adjust, so I did emergency surgery in the hotel room. Shout out to the mechanical pencil that I brought because I thought I was going to drop more. And that's going to bring us to our last section where you're looking for that grail watch and you want to get a slight discount on it in Japan, because when you're spending thousands of dollars, that slight discount is probably going to be hundreds of dollars. I'm going to show you how I found my rare grail watch in Japan. So if you're actually in Japan, you can search for the name of the specific type of watch that you want. And when you go to the shopping tab, a bunch of those watches are going to pop up. Now, some are going to be from eBay, but because your location is now in Japan, a lot of local stores that sell a variety of watches, but also sell online, will pop up. A lot of the websites are in Japanese, but you can go to the website, try to find an address or the name of the storefront, and then use that to route yourself to the store. So I looked up a Cartier Basculant, and I didn't think that I'd actually find one. I didn't know if this would work. I went to a store called Ginza Raisin, but I showed up to the store and they actually had one in here. They had tons of really high luxury brands like Lange, Patek Philippe, Audemars Piguet. If you're looking for a grail watch, this was a great place to start. But I made my way through to their Cartier section, and that's when I saw their Basculant. I asked to see if I could try it on, and they were super helpful. I worked with my friend Hiro Now, but this is actually when I committed a cardinal sin in Japan, which is traveling without my passport. So I couldn't get the discount of 10% for the tax-free price. So I actually left, went home, got my passport, and came back later that night. It was about 40 minutes there and back, but I ended up with the Cartier Basculant. Now, I've been looking in stores casually for this watch just to try on for about 10 years now. I haven't been looking too hard, but I have never seen one in the real world. So finding this one in Japan was a great deal, and one of the reasons I love this watch is it's similar to the JLC Reverso. This watch has a hidden mechanic where you can open it up, flip it around, and protect the face. There's also Cartier engraving inside the watch case back right there. So if you just push the watch face through, then you can flip it vertically instead of horizontally like the Reverso. And the additional feature to a watch like this is that you can actually stand it up and put it at the bedside as a small travel clock. Now, I've been keeping an eye on this watch on eBay and other sites for a while now, and they tend to sell for about $3,500 to $4,500. This is the smaller quartz version. I got it for $3,200. That's the tax-free price. The $3,500 options that you could get on eBay, that's not accounting for tax, which is going to be another $500 and shipping. So I think I saved about $500 on this watch. So I ended up with 4 watches: the Cartier Basculin, the Universal Genève, the Japan Market Citizen, as well as the King Seiko I got at the flea market. But that's going to be my buying guide for Japan. I hope it helped you out a little bit. I know a lot of the guides I watched online were more tailored to higher end watches, so hopefully you can find something cool for you. If you've ever been to Japan and you have any recommendations or tips, please drop them in the comments below. If you like content like this, let me know. I hope to make some more videos in addition to my normal flea market stuff, and subscribe for more.